Hi everyone, it's M.S.G. Hope you're doing well. And today I'm going to be covering the Chaos Cults detachment for Chaos Space Marines in 10th edition. This video on the poll was surprisingly the lowest scored one, which I was very actually surprised at because I know a lot of people do actually enjoy Chaos Cults lore-wise. I think they're very interesting. I did promise the Renegade Raiders, as mentioned, like I said in my Fellhammer Siege video, I would be doing the Renegade Raiders one as like a New Year special. So we're starting off the New Year strong. However, that may be slightly delayed, obviously, with Christmas and New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. But yeah, with that said, let's just get on into the review. So, like I said previously, it's just going to mimic the structure of the previous videos, as I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with who are subscribers to the channel. I'm going to cover the actual rule. I'll cover the enhancements, stratagems individually, and at the end I will highlight any combos or units which I feel are highlights of the detachment. I'll also be covering an overall strengths and weaknesses like split, as well as any kind of list that I would probably bring. And I'll also be quoting a couple, one particular list from last year from a gentleman named Derek. I forgot his name. Is it Apture, something like that? He's one of the best Chaos Cults players, or arguably the best Chaos Cult player in the entire world at the minute. But yeah, with that said, if you want to pause at any point, feel free to do so. Let's just get onto it. So, Chaos Cults have a rule. Theirs is Desperate Devotion. Utterly dedicated to the worship of the dark gods, thronging mortal cultists and regiments of traitor guardsmen are more than willing to make bloody sacrifices and take desperate actions in hope of attaining favour. Each time a damned unit from your army with the Dark Pact's ability is selected to make a normal or advance move, or declare a charge, which excludes units that arrive from reserves this turn, it can make a Desperate Pact. If it does, until the end of the phase, add 2 to the move characteristic of models in that unit, and add 2 to the charge rolls made for that unit. A Desperate Pact means each time a unit makes a Desperate Pact, it must first take a leadership test. If the test is failed, that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds before any effects of the Desperate Pact are resolved. And just a little caveat on this one, Traitor Guardsmen count as battle line for this particular one, which is fantastic. Because Traitor Guardsmen do need a bit of love, so you can kind of build a whole oops all Traitor Guardsmen list in this one, which is actually quite, funny. But yeah, the overall, like to briefly summarise it, the normal or advance move is you advance in your turn, in your movement phase. You can't just advance after you've moved. You have to declare that you're going to advance at the start of your movement phase with a unit. So that's one mortal risk of getting mortal wounds. Second is obviously the +2 to your charge is huge. That is really, really good for your like threat range. It's ridiculous, which I will get onto in a bit. But obviously, the rule itself is actually pretty good, so you don't get any increase in damage. It's more of a extra reliable movement and charge, which is again the +2 charge is fantastic. Negative, most of the time your leadership is going to be around 7+, which on average is pretty poor. You can mitigate this, like I've said. I will get onto that later though. But if you fail a leadership test, then obviously that's potentially 2d3 mortal wounds each turn on top of the dark packs, which you'll be doing. So, for example, you can, let's say, I don't know, I've got advance and charge on a unit of accursed cultists. So I'm going to advance, I'm going to throw a a desperate pact out. That's d3 mortal wounds if I fail it. Then I'm going to do a +2 to my charge, so I'm going to then have to take another test, which is so that's 2d3 mortal wounds, and then when I'm in combat, I will probably be dark pacting because it's Chaos Space Marine detachment rule. You're probably going to do it a majority of the time anyway, so that's potentially 3d3 mortal wounds on that unit from one activation. This is obviously discounting the fact that the unit might not even have survived, or maybe on death's door, like it might have had most of it wiped out. In addition, you can always get killed by Overwatch, like for example, Flamer units are pretty good against these guys, unfortunately. But yeah, so just to briefly summarise it, this is a horde army focused primarily on targeting your opponent, keeping them in the deployment zone or in their half of the battlefield, so tied up that they can't score or move properly without being obfuscated in some kind of way. So if you're unfamiliar with that type of play in general, you are going to struggle a lot because this detachment is very difficult to play well. I will get onto it later, like I mentioned, but there are ways where this detachment's arguably one of the strongest if piloted by a really good player. But first up, we'll cover the enhancements. So first up is Warped Foresight for 10 points. Dark Apostle or Dam model only, so that includes the Dark Commune. While the bearer is leading a unit with a Scout 6-inch ability, every model in the bearer's unit has a Scout 6-inch ability. For those who are unfamiliar, Scouts only works if you have the keyword on every single person in your unit. So if, for example, the Dark Commune joined a Accursed Cultist like brick, and they wouldn't be able to benefit from the Scout, even though the Scout move is innately on the data sheet for the Accursed Cultists. This basically gives them the ability to move with the Scout move, which is really, really good. I've given it a 7 out of 10 because it's cheap. It's 10 points, so 10 points for a 6-inch Scout move is, comparatively speaking, really, really good. Scout moves are insanely useful in almost every situation. They're very good for reacting. Obviously, you can get people to block them with infiltration, so if someone's clever, they'll be able to just use infiltrator units to block, because I believe you can't end a Scout move within 9 inches of an enemy unit. So if they're clever, they'll just put some units in front of you and just essentially stop you from getting any kind of reactive movement. So seeing as the Scout is only on the Accursed Cultist, like I mentioned, you will need to bring this, but that only means you can bring it on 1. So more of the time you're going to bring this with a Dark Commune. It's like the best, or one of the best enhancements for these guys, primarily for that extra movement. So having 2 inches of movement and +2 to your charges with Death Threat packs, you'll have a unit of Dark Commune and Accursed Cultist, which can use the Scout 6-inch move, followed by an 8-inch regular move, which is the 2 inches extra from the Desperate Pact. You get D6 inches extra movement on the advance, which is on average between 2 and a 3, giving them the ability to advance and charge with the Dark Commune's Dark Ritual. So that's once per game, or you can use Reckless Hate if you want to use that for a command point and get advance and charge there. And then you can add +2 to your charge move with another Desperate Pact for an average of 26.5 to 28-inch movement range, which is absolutely crazy. That's really, really good. Second, we have the Amulet of Tainted Vigor. So a Dark Apostle model only. In your command phase, you can return up to D3 destroyed Dam models, excluding character models, to the bearer's unit. I've given this a 9 out of 10. This is arguably the best. In my opinion, it is the best, but some people, there's a bit of contentious there, but either way, I think this is the best enhancement in the detachment. Dark Apostles are normally overlooked for the Dark Commune, because the Dark Commune on average are a lot more potent, so they get the +1 to hit, +1 to wound, advance and charge once per game, and they also give the unit that they're in the 5-up invulnerable save. They also have some pretty decent shooting from the guy who's in charge of it. I forgot the name of the specific dude, but it's the Witchfire stuff he can throw out, which is surprisingly hard hitting. Your opponent's not going to understand how hard he actually can get hit by them, but either way, once they run into something though, they're probably going to die majority of the time, unless their opponent severely whiffs it, or just whiffs the shooting, whiffs the melee, etc. Dark Apostle offers a more reliable +1 to wound in melee. So for example, if you get charged and your opponent is just trying to tarp at you with something that's quite tanky, like a Beast of Nurgle, you can just get +1 to wound, which is fantastic. Instead of it being in that particular turn, you can just get it all the time. It's currently 65 points, but with the enhancement, it's 20 points. So it brings him just under the cost of a Dark Commune, which I believe at the moment are 90 points. And being able to bring back D3 Dam models. It also includes mutants, torments, which are the big, like, scary ones, which are the ones that you want to keep alive. Your torments are your main damage dealer. Running with Accursed Cultists, take the casualties on the mutants, because obviously they're literally just cannon fodder. And if you lose any torments, you can just bring them back. In addition to this as well, due to unit coherency, if you lose a model and when you're bringing it back it doesn't specify that, you can place it in a place where you have to essentially, I've worded that terribly, you can bring it back and get extra movement essentially. So when you're playing this detachment, and this is what I was going to mention earlier, this detachment forces you to be a good player. It plays a very specific style of Warhammer, which is very, very unique. I have never ever seen a similar army to this when played really, really well. You are going to take a lot of casualties. Your main damage dealers are so obvious that you're going to get, like, your opponent just focuses them down almost immediately, knowing that they can't really do much. However, there are ways around this. You're going to need to be very, very good at utilizing the rules. So, for example, any extra movement, that plus 1.5 inch to 2 to 3 inches of movement from resurrecting, D3 torments, because the torment bases, excuse me, I've got hiccups, my apologies. Your torment bases are actually sizable. I think they're about, what, 50 mil, 40 mil? So you can get a decent amount of movement out of that. Any kind of extra movement you're going to need to get, essentially. And it's never a bad thing to be good at it anyway, because it makes you a better player. Either way, though, like I said, the accursed cultists are just genuinely quite scary, and this allows them to get brought back. Well, D3 of them brought back, which is, in my opinion, excellent. It's really, really good. Next up, we have the Incendiary Gourd. This is a Dark Apostle or Dam model only. While the bearer's unit is below its starting strength, add 1 to the strength characteristic of melee weapons equipped by Dam models in the unit. And while the unit is below half strength, add 1 to the attacks characteristic of the weapons as well. I've given this an 8 out of 10. I think this is great. +1 strength is nice, so you're bringing up your accursed and... I can't get my words out today. Accursed Cultist and Dark Commune unit to strength 6 on average, because they are strength 5 base kit, and having +1 attack means they go from d6 plus 2 to d6 plus 1 to d6 plus 2. You can make this ridiculous later on, because of the fact that there's a stratagem that you can use this with, and the majority of the time you are going to be below starting strength anyway, because of the sheer amount of packs you're going to be taking, any kind of opponent shooting, etc. So you're going to get this pretty much all the time. Again, getting below half strength, it's that very fine line to balance. You do want to make sure you're not too close to dying to get that extra attack, but getting all of the mutants out of the way and keeping your torments alive and having the ability to just throw out a metric boatload of high strength and high damage attacks is quite ridiculous. But like I said here, you can bring this with a Dark Apostle, which is something I don't think I'd recommend. I'd probably bring this with the Dark Commune. Dark Commune, yeah. So +1 strength brings Dark Apostle to strength 7, and your Torments to strength 6, which will help cover a lot of T6 infantry. So like Death Guard, for example, this is a very good choice into Death Guard. +1 strength essentially amounts to +1 to wound in that circumstance, because you'd be wounded on 5s, and now you're wounded on 4s, and then you also get the +1 to wound on the Dark Apostle anyway, with the buff he provides to the unit, so you're wounding on 4s, which is fantastic. 3s, which is really, really good. You'll be wounding T3 and T5 infantry on 2s, T6 infantry on 3s, and T7, T11 things on 4s. Plus the Dark Apostle and the Torments have a very similar stat line when it comes to melee, so they're all like strength 6, strength 7, -1 AP, 2 damage flat. So every time you get damage through against a Plague Marine, unless they use Disgustingly Resilient, which is something that you want them to use, because the majority of the time you want them to waste 2 command points on something that you're probably going to kill anyway, and if they don't, then they're going to, severely lose that unit or get the unit wiped, in all honesty. That's 1 dead Plague Marine, which is really, really good. +1 attack, again, is the main thing you want here, simply due to the fact that you have so many attacks coming out. It's genuinely quite ridiculous. This also applies to the models in the unit as well. It doesn't necessarily apply to the unit. Like, for example, if you lose all the mutants in a unit, and then you have the Dark Apostle and the Dark Commune, attached to your Accursed Cultist, you will still get the benefit of the +1 attack, so it's not just on the Accursed Cultist, you also get it on your Dark Apostle or your Dark Commune, which is really, really good. Your 10 mutants are literally just a meat shield, like you're not bringing them for anything other than to act as essentially ablative wounds. And sometimes as well, based on again, this is very situational, but it is something you want to keep in mind. If I'm hiding my unit behind some ruins and I want to advance and charge next turn and want to get that extra movement, but I want to make sure I get the extra attack as well because the unit I'm charging is the one with the Incendiary Gourd, I want to make sure that I can try and fail these Dark Packs and Desperate Packs, kill a couple of the mutants off so then I'm below half strength, and then when I am below half strength, I'll get the benefit of the enhancement for the +1 attack. You will, again, this is very situational, and it does depend a bit on luck, because obviously if you roll hot, then you won't get any mortal wounds on your unit, unfortunately. But it's definitely doable, and if it does present the opportunity to do it, then I'd probably do it. Last but least, unfortunately, is the Cultist Brand. It's 20 points. Dark Apostle or Damned model only. If every other model in the bearer's unit, excluding Dark Disciples, is damned, you can re-roll advance and charge rolls. I've given it a 4 out of 10. It's situational, in my opinion. This enhancement is actually pretty solid. It's like a 6 out of 10 or a 7 out of 10 on average. But the ability to advance and charge is something we already have on the Dark Commune. We already have a stratagem for it. We also have, things that don't even really need that ability anyway, because we've got like what, traitor guardsmen, cultists. Like, you're not going to advance and charge cultists. You're just not. Well, a very, very rare amount of times are you wanting to do that, but yeah, that's by the by. Basically, it's too expensive. Unfortunately, it's 20 points. It's not a bad enhancement, like I said. It's just simply outclassed by everything else. You know, that's literally it. Because you've got 3 units of the Cursed Cultists, you're going to bring like the maximum amount of them. So you want to maximize their effectiveness because they are primary damage dealers in this detachment. In my opinion, I'm bringing the Incendiary Gourd, Amulet of Tainted Vigor above everything else, and then as the third enhancement, as a little add-on, it's probably best to bring the Scout one because obviously you get the extra movement. But yeah. Next up, we have Chosen for Glory. This is a stratagem. So it's essentially shooting or fight phase, 1 damn unit from your army that has not been selected to shoot or fight. You can make a Desperate Pact. If it does until the end of the phase, each time a model in your unit makes an attack, you can re-roll the hit roll. And if you didn't fail the resulting leadership test when you made the pact, you can re-roll the wound roll. So this is a 9 out of 10. I've ranked this as excellent. Some people would put this lower because of the stringent requirements, but it works in shooting and fighting, which is, again, the shooting part's not really a big thing. It's the fight phase, which is the main thing. You can essentially get full rerolls to hit and potentially full rerolls to wound on top of your dart packs, which is really, really good. So you'll be fishing for them 6s for lethals or sustained, which is really, really nice. If you do pass the leadership test, which is very likely, if you have this on a Dark Apostle unit, for example, or the one with the Incendiary Gourd, you can just throw out a ridiculous amount of attacks because you're more than likely going to pass on a 5-up or a 6-up for the leadership. So, for example, here, like I've mentioned, it's better to have the Dark Apostle lead the unit that you're going to use this on because of the 5-up leadership and +1 to wound. Although getting +1 to wound, +1 to hit and advance and charge on the Dark Commune is far better overall and is marginally riskier. So this is what sometimes can be underwhelming on any other unit that isn't your Cursed Cultist, but because your Cursed Cultist are your main powerhouse in this detachment, I'd give this a 9 out of 10. Again, like I've said here, you can get it on Guardsmen, but you're not going to want to spend 1 command point for Guardsmen to reroll all hits because they're hitting on 4s. Again, it's just too situational for that, but overall, if used appropriately, it's 9 out of 10. I think this is really, really good. Next up is Crazed Focus. In your shooting phase, 1 damn unit from your army that has not been selected to shoot, you can make a Desperate Pact. If it does until the end of the phase, increase the AP characteristic of weapons by 1, and if it didn't fail the leadership test, you get +1 strength as well. I've given this 3 out of 10. A positive is you get AP3 sniper rifles, AP3 grenade launchers, AP4 plasma, AP1 flamer, -5 AP on melter guns, especially if you're punching into 2-up, 3-ups at armor saves. So, for example, any kind of power armor unit, with that, an invul save is really, really, like, this is actually quite nasty against them. Being able to get a sniper rifle and essentially pick off, a character or 2 potentially is really, really good. You do also get strength 4 -1 AP las guns if you don't pass if you do pass the leadership test, which is actually quite good into your T3 1 wound infantry. So other chaff units, it absolutely shreds them. Eldar, with a T3 4 at 1 wound, you get them to a 5-up. Any fail is pretty much a dead guy. And then again, though, this is mainly really bad shooting. I say it's mediocre at the very best. It's usually not worth it for 1 command point. If it worked in melee, it'd probably be a lot better because getting that extra AP and +1 strength is actually quite nasty. But again, because it's limited to shooting, it's just, you're not really going to shoot in this army. You're just going to shoot like, just really poor in this army unless you're using the special weapons, and even then, it's not something to write home about. But yeah. Next up, we have Selfless Demise. Fight phase just after an enemy unit has selected its attacks. On 1 damn unit from your army that was selected for the target of 1 or more of the attacking unit's attacks. Until the attacking unit has resolved all its attacks, each time a model in your unit is destroyed, roll 1d6, and on a 6, the attacking unit will suffer 1 mortal wound after all of its attacks have been resolved. This is after the enemy has selected their attacks and after they have resolved them, so once they've blown up and killed whatever it is, you can use this. And essentially just, do mortal wounds on the back. The more models in the unit, obviously, the better this is. So I'd highly recommend using this on a move blocking unit like your 20-man cultists. They're a standout when it comes to this particular one. The way you want to play this, obviously, is situational, which is why I give it a 5 out of 10. I think if you do spike on the 6s, because there's no limit to the actual wounds inflicted, you can surprisingly deal quite a lot of damage, depending on what you're up against, obviously. And like I said, it's best used on a 20-man cultist blob. Important to note that 1 CP for a unit of cultists to get a high probability to get killed from shooting, let alone in melee. On average, you'll probably be throwing around 5 to 12 dice, depending on the game and army you're up against. However, if you do manage to get charged by something with a small amount of attacks, like a Mauler Fiend, that, you know, small amounts of attacks but hard hitting, you're probably going to lose a couple of models, but you know, you can then get them on the punch back. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get a couple of dice. And as an Emperor's Children player, I'm just going to be using the Mauler Fiend stat line from there, which is very similar. I think it's literally identical to the Chaos Space Marine one. So Mauler Fiend is hitting on 3s, and we've just whiffed everything. Wow, okay, that's 3 hits. Strength, Tets are 2, obviously. All wound, AP -2, so that's 3 dead cultists. So we're going to do the Lasher Tendrils next, which I believe is 6 attacks. So we've got 3 wounds there. So these are strength 7, hitting on 3s. That is 6 hits. 2s. That is 5 wounds. So that is 8 wounds overall, because the t-shirt saves, so they don't get a save. So we're going to use this to see how many 6s we get. We got none, unfortunately. But we'll re-roll just for the sake of argument. There we go, that's what we're talking about. We got 4. 4 back on 1 command point. Again, like I said, the first roll is probably just, you know, really, really bad, but he's only killed, like, what? We've done 4 mortal wounds for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 dead cultists, 4 mortal wounds back on a Mauler Fiend, which is, in my opinion, pretty good. Next up, we have Reckless Haste, which is essentially just advance and charge on a damned unit. I've given it a 7 out of 10. Again, it's nice to have, but less so in this detachment, because the majority of the things that we do have access to, like melee-wise at least, already either have some way to get advance and charge without having to use a command point, and it's very unlikely the unit's going to survive after. But then again, you know, the 5-up invul on the Dark Communicus Cultist Blob and 6-up Feel No Pain on them is really, really good. Best used on a Dark Apostle and a Cursed Cultist unit, as you'll get that extra threat range. So you get the +1, +2 to your charge, +2 to your movement. You get the Surge move from the Accursed Cultists, and on top of that, you get the +1 to wound in melee, and you get to re-roll, advance and charge, which is just really, really good on that unit. It can also help in niche scenarios if you need to get a damned unit to target or block your opponent. So if I advance a unit of 20 cultists, that's around 6 inches plus d6 inches extra movement on top of the potential 12 from the charge. If I believe spending a command point to let them charge is worth it, I'll do it. But remember, this detachment's main playstyle isn't about killing, so because I've got the ability to advance and charge on damned units that aren't really good in melee, that doesn't necessarily limit the efficacy of this stratagem. So if I need to get them into a position where, for example, I really want, you know, a unit screened out, I really want something like, for example, we'll use a Bloodthirster, for example, or like a big threatening fly unit, like a Demon Prince. A majority of the time, you are going to have a majority of the board control with just the sheer amount of models you've got. You are going to lose a lot of them, but a majority of the time you are going to have that ability to essentially stop fly units from blocking you. Anyone who doesn't have fly has to go through the the choke points in the map, depending on the terrain, obviously, or they have to go around. If they're going around, they're wasting the time. If they're going through you, you're going to essentially block them and be like, yep, you can get through here, but instead of being able to, you know, charge, I'm just going to end my movement 1 inch away from you after advancing and then, you know, charge you if I believe getting in combat with you is a good idea. So, like, for example, against a tank, if you want to make sure you charge a tank, and then essentially, you know, with a 20-man unit of cultists, you can just literally body block the tank and force it to, you know, essentially bubble wrap the tank and then stop it from disembarking in certain circumstances. It's just really, really good to have that ability to do that. Again, as well, for like gimping people's charges, if you want to advance and keep within, outside of an inch from a unit, that will probably kill you, but their movement will be severely mitigated because they can charge into you, but they can't go around you. And if they've got fly, because of the sheer amount of units you've got on the board, they won't have a place to land without being within engagement range. So if you position appropriately, this is what I mean by you have to be very, very good at knowing what you're doing. There's a lot of moving parts in this stratagem and detachment. If you can get them all working, your opponent is going to be bashing their head against the wall because it's so annoying to be like, oh, I've got a bloodthirster. Oh, he's killed a unit of 20 cultists. Okay, he's moved 2 inches because we've body blocked him and he can't get to where he wants to get to. Oh, I'll just charge another unit. I'll go through them then. Congratulations, you've wasted 3 turns of killing cultists. Who cares? Their big scary demons has been made to look like an idiot. Next up we have Mortal Thralls. Opponent shooting phase just after an enemy unit has selected their targets. 1 Heretic Astartes unit from your army that was selected as the target for 1 or more of the attacking unit's attacks. 1 friendly dam unit within 3 inches of the unit, visible to both your unit and the attacking unit. Until the end of the phase, while your damned unit is on the battlefield, each time your opponent would make a wound roll for an attack, that targets the Heretic Astartes unit in question. If your damned unit is visible to the attacking model and is an eligible target for the attack, no roll is made. Instead, your damned unit suffers a number of mortal wounds equal to the damage of the attack. So I've ranked that a 4 or a 5 out of 10. It's either situationally brilliant or average. TLDR, if you shoot a las cannon into a Heretic Astartes unit, so let's say I have a unit of Havocs, so I'll just use Chaos Space Marines for an example. I have a unit of Havocs and I want to shoot somebody's Vindicator because I want to get rid of that because it's a big scary cannon that can do a shitload of damage to me. I shoot, so that's 4 las cannon shots into the Vindicator. I pop this stratagem because there's a cultist blob that's in front of the Vindicator acting as a screening unit. I completely nullify everything. Yeah, it's d6 plus 1 damage, so you will be taking quite a lot of casualties. But if they have a let's say that I'll just shoot. Actually, I'll get some dice. So we've got 4 las cannons, so we're hitting on 3s. 6s explode, so we've got 3 hits. 1 just missed. 2s. 2 wounds because I rolled a 1. That's a 6 and a 5. They automatically wound to d6 plus 1 damage. So that's 2 damage, 3 damage. So that's 5 damage. 5 mortal wounds dealt to a unit of cultist, and a unit of Havocs has just wasted the turn shooting at you, essentially. Which is, again, situationally brilliant. But you are going to be starved for command points in this detachment. You are going to need a lot of them. Again, the damn unit in question has to be visible, so like I mentioned here, it's a fair limitation in my opinion, as normally you'll want cultists in the front of your vehicles anyway to block incoming charges. This is also so you can't hide cultists behind cover and potentially stay on an objective to do an action while taking the shots on your vehicle. So if I've got a unit of cultists that's within 3 inches of a Vindicator on an objective doing an action, and my opponent shoots at me, I will then, unless they're visible, I have to essentially stop what I'm doing and then get shot at. But most of the time, in that circumstance, you're going to be wanting to have them visible anyway, just to block them. But again, it's a pretty nice stratagem, actually. I actually quite like it. Finally, we have Infernal Sacrifice. So 1 damn unit from your army that has not been selected to fight this phase, your unit can make a Desperate Pact. If it does, your unit automatically will suffer D3 mortal wounds in addition to any suffered for failing the failed leadership test. Until the end of the phase, you get +1 to your attacks and +1 to your strength if you pass the leadership test on top of that as well. I've given this a 7 out of 10. So +1 strength and +1 attack is nasty, and obviously this stacks with the Goad enhancement, which I think is really, really good. And I've just done a bit of math hammer here and I've shown you this. So most of the time you will be passing the test, because obviously 6 up 5 up most of the time. So with the Dark Commune and the Cursed Cultist, you'll get that +1 to wound and hit. Advance and charge, 6d6 plus 2 attacks at strength 6 -1, 2 damage flat. And if you use this on the Incendiary Goad unit, you'll get all of the above, but it'll be 6d6 plus 3 attacks at strength 7 -1, 2 damage flat with +1 to hit and +1 to wound. That's going to pretty much just chew absolutely everything up. It's a ridiculous amount of attacks. Again, automatically taking the D3 mortals isn't great, but it can help if you want in that extra mortal wounds check to get below half strength for the incendiary gourd. You can use it on a unit of 20-man cultists if you want, because then you'll get 3d3 mortal wounds on top of everything else, and giving them +1 attack is quite funny, but you'd need to be smoking the Emperor's Children's finest cracked. I think that's a good idea. But what I am going to do is I'm going to get a couple of dice, so we're going to use the incendiary gourd. So we're going to assume in this circumstance that all the torments in the unit are alive, or, you know, to some degree. So 63, so 6 dice here, yep. So that is, I genuinely don't think I have enough dice. So that's 63 plus 3. So that is a grand total of 15, 18, I can't count, 22, 25, and then obviously you get the +2 from each individual one. So that is 35 attacks, which is really nasty. On average at strength 6, +1 to hit. That is, let's put it this way. We'll do the rolls actually. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's 35 attacks. I actually think I need to get more dice here. Just give me a second, because let me just mute my mic while I do that for you, gentlemen. Like I said, I genuinely don't think I have enough dice. So let me count. So that's 35 overall. So that's 5, 10, 15, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. So we've got 30 here, and we'll do an extra 5 later down the line. So these are hitting on 3s. God, I genuinely can't hold this many dice. Hitting on 3s. We'll do dark packs as well, so we're going to get sustained or lethals. Quite a lot of hits. So we've got sustained, 3 sustained out of all of them, which is surprisingly bad. That's fine. Miss, miss, miss. Majority of those, we only missed 6, which I'm surprised at. But we'll roll for the 5 extra anyway, because we've got the that with 30 dice. We need 35 overall. 3s. We have missed 2 overall. So that's fine, that's all those. So now we get the +1 to wound. So let's say we're going into something, I don't know, like a Land Raider or something, for argument's sake. So let's roll these. So that is strength 7, toughness 12, +1 to wound, so 4s. Surprisingly high amount. I like it. Very nice. So that is, let me have a look, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15 have gone through to wound on the Land Raider. -1 AP, so 3 ups. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's 8 damage. Sorry, 8 instances of damage that have failed. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. We have just blown up a Land Raider with a unit of Accursed Cultists. Granted, they are buffed beyond, you know, any kind of reasonable thing. But yeah, that is just on average what kind of damage you'll be doing. You'll just absolutely shred pretty much anything. For the standout units and combos, though, so we have the Dark Apostle with the Amulet of Tainted Vigor and Incendiary Gourd. Dark Apostle is, at least in my opinion, only slightly worse than the Commune. I think the Commune are better, but he's still very, very good in this detachment. So you get the +1 to wound in melee all the time, so this is great if you're in combat and you're punching up, which you're going to be, like, most of the time. Once per battle, you can remove Battle Shock from any unit within 12 inches of the Dark Apostle model, which is really, really nice, especially if you're trying to contest them objectives. So, for example, if your opponent's relying on battle shocking one of your very easy to kill units, just so you can knock them off the objective, your Dark Apostle can just essentially turn around and just go nope, and you still got that objective, which is really, really good. And we do have access to a lot of sticky objectives as well, which is really, really helpful for, you know, not using this and being able to use it on a unit which you need it on. Also means that you can access stratagems on units which you need them on as well. So, for example, if your Cursed Cultist unit gets battle shot because it's below half strength, then you can use this just before the fight phase, so you're fully guaranteed to use something like Chosen for Glory, which is thumbs up. That's fantastic. 5-up leadership stat, which is insane. You'll very rarely be failing any desperate or dark pack test with the unit is attached to. Granted, he doesn't offer the rerolls on the dark pack leaderships like the Dark Commune do, unfortunately, but he's still very, very useful. And finally, he's got potential to do mortal wounds with Malign Sacrifice, but that's if you really need to do it. I genuinely think this is an absolutely atrocious ability. It's just really, really bad, but yeah. Next up, we've got the Cultist Mob, which I'm just going to briefly cover. Cheap at 50 for 10, 100 for 20. Disposable cover a lot of ground. Disposable units, cover a lot of ground despite having small base sizes, so you can screen effectively. Take shots for your heavier Heretic Astartes units, which you'll want to keep alive. Poor leadership, but that's, you know, by the by. Although this sticky objectives that they have is absolutely crazy. You are going to be bringing at least 2 to 3 of these, maybe even more. Particularly in varying sizes because they're really, really good. Dark Commune and the Cursed Cultist, this is like the best unit that we have access to, in my opinion, in this detachment. It's just ridiculous. I remember when this was like the best unit in the Chaos Space Marine Codex in general. It was really strong for a very long time. So once per game, you'll get +1 to wound, +1 to hit, weapon skill 3 up essentially. So you're getting a more reliable ability to get through, more for hits and stuff like that. You get advance and charge without needing to use a command point, so you're saving on your command points, which you might need elsewhere. 6d6 plus 2 attacks from the Torments, which are your main damage dealers. So that's between 18 to 48 attacks at strength 5, -1 AP, 2 damage each. I've already rolled the dice earlier, so I'm not going to do it again. Scout 6-inch on the Accursed Cultist, but you'll need to bring the Warp Foresight enhancement to bring that on the whole unit, unfortunately, but still that gets the Scout 6-inch, which is really nice. Grants the whole unit a 5-up invul, which is a very, very nice thing to have. You do get your 6-up Feel No Pain on the Accursed Cultist anyway, but even like if it's like 3 damage, damage flat, shooting or melee, being able to essentially just throw out a 5-up invul and just save 1 torment can be the difference between winning a game and not. Like, it's genuinely that impactful. And now obviously they've got the 6-up leadership, better than a 7-up leadership. That's all I'm going to say really. It gets that reliability through, and they also grant reroll leadership tests on dark packs only, which allows you to essentially secure the damage you'd want a lot more reliably, because being able to reroll with an icon or any kind of way to get a reroll is really, really good. This is the staple of the list. This is like you're bringing at least 2 of them every game. You're always going to be bringing 3 Accursed Cultists in this detachment, and if you're not, you are actively throwing the game. They are the best unit in this detachment, and it's not even close. You can bring Bile with him, because obviously Bile can run the Accursed Cultists, so +1 strength, +1 toughness is nice. But the primary leaders you're going to be bringing on average are a Dark Apostle with the Amulet of Tainted Vigor, or the Incendiary Goad, or the 2 Dark Commune units with Incendiary Goad and Warped Foresight. So overall, excellent board control for the strengths and weaknesses. So we've got excellent board control given the sheer amount of units that you'll have. So there's obviously a plethora of different ways to play this detachment, but the most successful one I've seen after doing my research is essentially swamping your opponent in the deployment zone, preventing scoria early on if possible. If you can reliably tie up your opponent in the first 2 to 3 turns, then you'll more than likely win, but obviously that's easier said than done. You'll more than likely lose Wars of Attrition, simply due to the fact that you will probably lose a lot of your army. But most of the time you'll be that far ahead, you just won't really care. To paraphrase a quote I heard from years ago in one of the lore primers, cultists are the meat that will grind the gears of the Imperium to a standstill. So if you adopt that ethos and employ it to strategy in your games, you're more than likely going to find success, because it doesn't really mean that you can just throw away units, needlessly. You'll need to correctly determine when it'll be best times to sacrifice your units for move blocking, screening, objective contesting, as each loss needs to give you a tangible benefit. Because cultist, again, despite the points being 195 for a unit, a max unit, you do get a lot for it. They do need a points cut, in my opinion, just a bit. I think going to about 185, maybe 190 is like a push in the right direction. They're still incredibly scary. Like I've shown earlier, we blew up a Land Raider with one of them. And they're going to be your main damage dealer, like hammer units, so you'll want to use them as staging units, and in that one go turn that you're going to have at some point, you'll want to unleash them as effectively as you can on your opponent. If played well with the correct list, you can make deep striking units non-existent, or position themselves poorly by design, so they can't, jump strike, behind your enemy lines or into a hole in the mid board. They have to deep strike in their deployment zone if they want to make sure they get some kind of benefit from that unit. Otherwise, it's just going to be useless. It also works with move blocking, as you'll have a lot of coverage with your units due to their abundance. If you can move your unit into an area where your opponent needs to get through, they're going to be wasting their time dealing with some cannon fodder while you're scoring in the background. They can't stop the clock as much as your opponent wants to. In this circumstance, you're going to be winning. Like, who cares if you've killed my unit of 20 cultists for 100 points? I'm scoring primary objective, I'm scoring secondary objectives, and you've had your movement blocked, so it doesn't really matter. And again, you get very, very reliable access to sticky objectives. So if you're somehow able to get into your opponent's deployment zone, or an objective which your opponent needs to acquire for secondaries with a cultist mob unit, if they've got any units in their army with sticky objectives, then they'll be forced to redirect potentially vital resources towards getting that objective back. So for example, if I get a unit of cultists in their backline, or even a couple of units of cultists in their backline, and again, I'm against knights, for example, when they don't really have access to sticky objective, they're going to have to move their knight back, which then leaves pressure from the mid board. Relieves pressure from the mid board to secure that primary objective, and we've essentially forced them to move in a position where they're not comfortable with shooting at a unit that already has sticky objectives. And if they took that objective without anyone on it, the knight has to then go on the objective and take it back. So that's potentially 2 turns of movement wasted, which is really, really good for what cultists can get. Obviously, it's easier said than done, but that's just there in case you do have that situation in front of you. Weaknesses: we do have lackluster damage. It's pretty bad. Obviously, the Accursed Cultist Dark Commune combo, which has been very powerful for almost the entire duration of the CSM Codex. Rest of the army is just kind of trash. The guardsmen can do some damage with the rifles, las guns, melter, plasma guns, grenade launchers, but the mainstay of it is going to be your actual Chaos Space Marine units, if you are bringing a couple with them, or your Accursed Cultists in melee. Yeah, that's essentially it, unfortunately. So, in my opinion, this is the hardest detachment to play as well. Has a lot of moving parts, which an inexperienced or even an intermediate player is going to struggle to pilot. Majority of your army is going to be T3, T4, 1 wound infantry, which will be fairly easy to kill for a decent amount of armies. It's also very obvious which units your opponent will want to focus down. If I'm playing against this detachment, my priority is going to be to focus the Accursed Cultists and their characters down immediately, as they're the only reliable high damage dealers. Because I play Emperor's Children, if I manage to charge a unit with a Lord Exultant, I can quite reliably kill the Dark Commune with the Infractors and kill the the Torments, because I've got not Torments, sorry. I'll kill the Torments with the Lord Exultant, and I will kill the Dark Commune with the Infractors, so they don't get the +1 to wound, and they don't get anything after that. And the Lord Exultant's obviously, capable of doing an obscene amount of damage as well. But again, that's for the Emperor's Children in particular. It doesn't necessarily translate to any other army. Stratagem support can be quite poor. They should be tweaked. So, like I said here, Craze Focus needs to work in melee. That'd be nice. And being able to just take a shitload of mortal wounds for failing tests that you have to take is kind of annoying. But again, it's a very hard detachment to play well. Like I said, you're going to have times where you're going to roll shit, unfortunately, and it does happen. and this feels particularly punishing, especially with this detachment. Low OC per unit on average, and battle shock is a problem. So +1 OC on Dark Commune and Accursed Cultist or Cultist Mob. You do get 2 OC on Objective Control. I can't get my words out. 2 OC on Traitor Guardsman, which is quite nice actually, and obviously you get the +1 to your save because you're within cover. Sorry, if you're on the objective in the open, they do get +1 to the save, even if they're not near cover, which is actually quite good because they do have a 5 palm save. Due to the sheer amount of casualties you'll take from both the Dark and Desperate packs, your opponent's probably going to kill quite a lot of your army, as well as you will kill your army quite a lot. If your units are on the objective without sticky objectives and they get battle shocked, that's also a massive problem too. Quite matchup dependent, so again, it can be considered to be quite cheesy if you're against, like, you know, big greater demons, where yeah, you're going to probably get killed by whatever you get charged by, but you know, your bloodthirster, like mentioned earlier, your keeper of secrets, the ability to just essentially mitigate any kind of threat that they've got by just throwing chaff at them and or just ignoring them, because realistically, anywhere they go, they're going to kill something. But if you've got the ability to just be like, yeah, here's a unit of cultists, go and kill that for 100 points, I don't care what you do, I've scored the objective anyway, it doesn't matter, and they won't have any kind of access to sticky objectives, so as soon as they've gone back to kill whatever's on that objective, got it in the command phase, next phase you just move something on the objective and they lose it, and then, you know, the cycle repeats, and you just, essentially, they cannot win the game because they don't have the attacks to deal with it, unfortunately. It's a stat checklist, which is, again, it can be considered cheesy, but a majority of the time, it's this detachment's that hard to play. Most people are going to be like, okay, fair enough. But again, if your opponent doesn't have a reliable way to deal with like the sheer amount of chaff, you're just going to win just because of the sheer number of units that are in your army. Finally, as well, you're going to lose a lot of your army in the game. You're going to get shot at. You're going to be taking D3 to D6 mortal wounds a turn with the leadership tests. On average. So again, there are ways around it. So Dark Commune obviously gives the rerolls for Dark packs only, and the 6-up leadership. Bile gives a 6-up leadership and can blank a damage instance. So for example, if someone's shooting a 3 damage weapon into your torments, you can just ignore it. You get +1 toughness and +1 strength. Dark Apostles obviously got the best leadership at 5-up and can remove battle shock on a unit, but most of the time you'll be relying on getting a 7-up on 2d6 twice, which is statistically not likely to happen. You are going to be taking some mortal wounds. You also have to account for your opponent shooting in melee as well, which will take over a lot of the battlefield, especially if they've got the tech choice to deal with the amount of bodies you've got. And blast as well, because your majority of units are going to be between 10 to 20, some exceeding that, and blast is just going to get an absolute field day into whatever it is you're shooting. So for a list here, I have my own little list, which I've created. So we've got Cypher. Cypher's an auto-include, in my opinion. I think he's really, really good in a lot of competitive lists. We have the Dark Apostle with the Amulet of Tainted Vigor, like I mentioned earlier. We're going to attach him to a unit of 1 of 3 Accursed Cultists. In addition to this, we also have the 2 Dark Communes. One of them's got the Incendiary Goad, and the other one has the Foresight enhancement. And we're going to attach those 3 units to our 3 Accursed Cultist units. We have 1 unit of 20 Cultists and 5 units of 50. That's just going to be for board control, screening, objective secure, etc. We have 2 Traitor Guardsman squad. Again, they're primarily just there for, you know, range support. In addition, we have a Rhino. So, for example, in case we want to move a cultist mob, one of the 5 10-man units, we can just move it in the Rhino, or we can just move, you know, a Guardsman squad. If anything, we can put them in the Rhino and use the firing deck. If we want to, again, it's very situational, but the Rhino is primarily just there to get a unit, move it to another objective, stick it, etc. For firepower, we have 2 Predator Destructors with las cannons and a Chaos Vindicator. They're going to be covering the sight lines and covering for the long range shooting. Essentially, they're there for, again, the cultist mobs are also there just to tank the hits. You could bring Traitor Guardsmen instead of these. Simply due to the fact that, you know, instead of getting the tanks in, you could bring low. I mean, that's what, 280 points plus 185. My math is terrible, so that's about what, 465, maybe a bit higher. My math is terrible again. I really suck at math, unfortunately. But yeah, that's a lot of potentially traitor guardsman squad that you can bring, because obviously the battle line in here you can bring up to 6. You might want to bring them just for simply the fact that you can just swamp the board with an extra 40 units, sorry, 40 models rather, with mediocre shooting. Granted, they're not exactly going to be as heavy hitting as the other ones, and plus you can use them as cannon fodder for your accursed cultists. So obviously, if your opponent's shooting at your accursed cultists, you can use the stratagem, what allows you to pretty much just tank the shots for them instead, and you're not really going to care because it's traitor guardsmen. Who cares? But yeah, obviously the final one in the list is the Accursed Cultists. There's 3 max units at 195 points each. They're the bread and butter of the list. They're what you build a list around, pretty much. They're genuinely fantastic. From what I've gathered from Derek Apcher's list, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, and I do apologise if I am, the guy brought way more Traitor Guardsmen. He brought... originally he brought Seekers with Demonettes and some Nurglings. He brought a unit of Nurglings, a unit of Demonettes, and he also brought, instead of it being Seekers, he brought Silesk, the weird like AOS demon thingy. I forgot what it's called, with the Axe of Dominion. And apparently that was good for just dealing straight up damage, for killing stuff. It's 3 damage flat on its axe, if I'm not mistaken, so it's reliably killing elite infantry, which is what we want. In addition to this, we also have the Nurglings for the shenanigans. Pretty much, that's literally what their entire game plan is. But yeah, overall, where would I rank it? So this is going to be the most volatile ranking. Like I've said here, it's very difficult to play well and relies a lot on careful planning and positioning. So while on paper the weaknesses are incredibly pronounced, they're easy to kill, don't deal that much damage, obvious target acquisition for your opponent, somewhat predictable, you'll find that in the right hands and played with the best possible player, the Detachment is potentially in the top 3 for Chaos Space Marines, in my opinion. For your average player, it's 3 out of 10 bad. For a good player who's willing to put the effort in and get better at the game, and with this Detachment, I give it an 8.5. The sheer amount of scoring and denial and just annoyance your opponent is going to experience from being next to this list and dealing with this list is unparalleled, especially if you've got a good player piloting it. Like I've said here, the analogy I used is it's very similar to picking a low tier character in a fighting game. You'll find that you need to have studied the fundamentals of the game to a very high degree and think outside the box when playing in order to compete. So Warhammer, like I mentioned earlier, with something like, I don't know, Tekken, you'll want to study frame data, plus or negative frames, whether or not they've got any kind of moves they can do if they whiff a certain move, like what kind of combos they're doing, how the opponent's playing, etc. That can translate into Warhammer with movement utilization. How is my opponent playing? What units are they bringing, and what are they bringing them for? What kind of rules can I use that will benefit me a lot more? So there's one really, really good rule, and I forgot. There's a YouTube video explaining it. It's a transport trick where if you're in a transport, you can disembark. Let's say you've got 2 units of, I don't know, Havocs and Legionaries. Let's just say 5 Legionaries and 5 Havocs. I'm wanting the Havocs to get out, and if they do get out, they're going to get shot. What I will do is, and what the video mentioned is, put the Legionaries around the Rhino within 3 inches, so none of the Havocs can disembark without taking an emergency disembark. You then take the emergency disembark on the Havoc unit, move the Havoc unit 6 inches behind cover, and then take the mortal wounds on them. So while you have taken the mortal wounds, the unit is still alive. That's the kind of thinking you're going to need to employ when you're playing this Detachment. You're going to have to be very, very clever and think outside of the box with how you are going to play this. And then by extension, because this Detachment forces you to be a good player and use it, you're going to be better at playing your other lists. So like Renegade Raiders, for example, you can use that, and there's a lot of transport shenanigans you can do there. Creations of Bile, any of the other lists you are going to be better for by playing this one. So while the majority of the players in the Chaos Space Marines, like fan base, for lack of a better word, or community, want to play actual Chaos Space Marines, which is that's perfectly fine. I completely agree. It's really nice to see that the cultists offer a unique, difficult but rewarding way of playing. You will die a lot and potentially lose a lot while playing, but you'll also learn a lot too, and that knowledge cannot be replaced. If you get better at the game, you are going to benefit. Even if you lose, every loss is a lesson. Don't ever think that if you're losing, it's because you're a bad player. Every loss is a lesson. Don't think about, oh, I could have done this differently, I could have done that. You'll learn, and eventually, after all them losses and even some wins, it's going to click, and then you're going to start absolutely just destroying people with this detachment. But yeah, thank you for watching. Again, I appreciate your patience. It is 2 days before Christmas as of the time of, doing this video. It's currently the 23rd of December. So I will leave you to it. Thank you for watching. If you feel like you have learned anything, or if you want to grace me with your patronage and subscribe to the channel, I would greatly appreciate it. If you want to leave a comment, with any kind of feedback, or even if you just want to leave a comment for support, it's always appreciated. Regardless, it was very nice speaking with all of you, and thank you for listening. And no matter where you are in the world, always remember to praise the dark gods, and happy holidays to everybody watching. Cheers.